Well, one of these complexes was built on King Drive between 63rd and 66th, easily one of Southside Chicago's worst areas. The co-op was named the Parkway Gardens, and at the time it was state-of-the-art for middle-class families.
With 35 buildings and nearly 700 units, it quickly became a premier housing choice for African-American families.
When I was growing up, this was considered the elite property for doctors, lawyers, nurses, professional people that lived over here. This was the cornerstone of our community.
It's protected by train yards on the south and west sides, an elementary school to the north, and a major fence going down King Drive. So although it was in the hood, it was sheltered from the bad elements and the residents could live a peaceful life. This included the family of former First Lady Michelle Obama, for those who didn't know. Well, the glory days of Parkway Gardens lasted for a couple of decades with a strong middle-class community. But then, sadly, the complex would start its gradual decline. In the mid-1980s, the owners of Parkway sold the complex to a new investor who decided to get rid of the co-op status. They replaced it with Section 8 renting, and here's where the problems began. Throughout the 80s and 90s, the new owners neglected the property and started accepting new residents without background checks. And because of this, Chicago kingpins began moving into the complex to operate their business. Specifically, a BD kingpin named Tokyo G opened up in the complex and built a major operation. So major traffic was coming in and out of the Parkway Gardens on a daily basis, which caused other hoods to become jealous. Specifically, a territory across King Drive thought that he was taking up their business and they plotted on his head. This would be a reputed GD set called STL, long known for putting in work. Well, in September of 1998, Tokyo was tragically killed while rolling through their neighborhood. This is known to be the first official loss of Parkway as a collective, and from what we know, STL were the big bullies in the neighborhood and they simply eliminated Tokyo because he was taking their customers. In most of Chicago, this would start a major beef, but Parkway just really wasn't like that yet. These other hoods had major gangs that had been rocking together for decades, and Parkway really had nothing. They didn't have structure and there was no unity in order for them to fight off these other hoods. And as a result of all this, no one respected them in the streets, which will actually be important. Well, because of this lack of respect, many of the Parkway youth were tested and disrespected at school. This made it very important for them to stick together and to always have each other's backs against all odds. Since the very start, it was loyalty and brotherhood over everything, as it was the only way they could survive. Then, out of nowhere, their challenges would become even more complicated. In 1998, Chicago began tearing down the majority of their public housing, and instead of rebuilding the projects, they decided to give all of the residents Section 8 vouchers where they could move into complexes like Parkway Gardens. And just like that, the Parkway Gardens filled up with project residents from all over the city. Obviously, with all the gang beef in Chicago, this made for a potentially dangerous situation. Rival gang members could now be neighbors, and not to mention that the original Parkway residents were entering the streets as well. The Parkway teenagers could potentially not like these other hoods moving into theirs, and maybe they'll want to send a message. Things could potentially get ugly, and there was only one way to keep the peace. The Parkway Gardens residents need to agree to unify as one and to leave alone their past affiliations. So here's how it plays out. One particular Parkway native would step up to unify everyone who was moving in. This would be Odee Perry, one of the most charismatic yet dangerous teenagers you'll ever meet.
Tell me about Odee Perry. This is your best friend.
Folks was a gangster. He was real savage.
Folks was just like a young wild, but he had heart. He was fearless. He ain't had no fear. Ain't nothing he was really scared of.
According to many, Odee Perry was like the leader of the new generation of Parkway.
That's like our big brother type shit, showing us the ropes as far as small shit. Got a little money on them and shit, like a few thousand, motherfuckers ain't have money back then. So we started doing the same thing. Same thing.
Odee Perry was a dangerous teenager, but instead of pushing people away, he wanted to unify Parkway as one. Essentially, him and his little homie T. Roy were the ones to welcome everyone in and have them all pushing Parkway. On top of this, Odee was very advanced and he was known to put a lot of people from the younger generation onto his lifestyle. But on the flip side, if they ever had issues with people at school or on the streets, Odee was always there to back them up. To him and T. Roy, they saw loyalty as the only way Parkway would ever survive the streets of Chicago. You must always have your brother's back, right or wrong, and crossing them, you better not do it. Okay, so you might be sitting in your house in Santa Rosa, California thinking, why would living in a specific apartment complex be this serious? Like, why do they all have to be unified, and who's even out there trying to harm them? So let me explain the dynamic. Right across King Drive, you have the reputed STL Gangster Disciples. For years, these were the bullies of the whole Woodlawn area, and they always took Parkway as a joke. But with this generation led by Odee and Boss Top, the Parkway Gardens were not going to put up with this. So every single day in the mid-2000s, there were fights both at school and on the streets. It continued like this for a few years, and thankfully no one ever died. But then Odee Perry decides that it's time to go full-fledged on the rivals, no more fighting. He allegedly tells all of the younger homies like T-Roy that fighting is no longer allowed and it's time to start sparking sticks. He did this to prepare the youngins that the Parkway Gardens were now becoming implicated in a serious deadly beef. Specifically, the local gangs of STL, Jaro City, and 051 Young Money were clicked up against 600 and Front Street, and because Parkway had clicked up with the latter two hoods, they were becoming targets in the beef themselves. Yeah, things were about to get ugly, and Odee wanted to make sure that his hood was ready for real beef. Cause once the beef crosses that line, everyone from Parkway will now be a target. Well, because of Odee, the beef would definitely cross that line. On January 12, 2011, Parkway claimed the life of 15-year-old Shondale Tuka Gregory at a bus stop on 63rd. From all accounts, Tuka wasn't even in the beef, he just so happened to hang out with the members in the neighborhood.
He just wanted to do right to make me proud, that's all. Was he gang related? No. No.
You don't think Tuka wasn't in the gang?
No.
The loss of Tuka devastated the 63rd community, and especially his best friend FBG Duck.
And me and him clicked, like that was one of my real close friends. Like every day, like spend the night at his house, he spend the night at mine.
Duck was at home when he heard the shots, and he went out running to see what happened, and that's when he saw his friend's last breath.
You feel me? Then I ran all the way from 62nd and Wabash all the way to 63rd to St. Lawrence. Saved them right there on the floor.
After grieving this terrible loss, they now needed to know who did this. STL quickly found out that Odee Perry was the one responsible.
Knew exactly who killed Tuka right away because it was so many people out there. Walked up and only killed Tuka, only shot Tuka.
He was at a bus stop?
Yeah, he was at the bus stop. They on a bus stop 6 deep. He killed Tuka.
Odee Perry was the shooter for Tuka. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Because of this horrible event, STL was ready to get revenge on Parkway. And because of this, the younger generation of Parkway was now forced to get violent as well. According to T-Roy, he was already ready to get stepping, but unexpectedly one of his friends would as well. This would be a friend who had only moved into Parkway a year before this incident. This would be 15-year-old Davon Bennett, who was already a goon in his previous hood. But not only was he a goon, he was also charismatic and extremely handsome. I'm just kidding. Well, as soon as he moved in, he was treated like family, with Odee welcoming him and T-Roy becoming his best friend. Like, for whatever reason, him and T-Roy hit it off from the first day, so much so that Vaughn was willing to slide for him. And just like that, Parkway was developing their first official goon squad. They weren't even a gang, they were just guys who held loyalty and brotherhood over all else. They started calling themselves Wick City, Wick for Wild, Insane, Crazy, and 3 Eyes to show BD Alliance. Still though, after the death of Tuka, nobody respected them because they never had history of beef.
But yeah, that was the name, Wick City, and people used to make fun of us because, like, you know, like growing up on food stamps and stuff, you get called the Wick.
Well, little did Southside Chicago know, the Parkway Gardens were filled with young and wicked goons. Obviously, they were led by Odee and Boss Top, but the young guys were equally as wild. Miniature T-Roy and super handsome Vaughn were like beasts that were ready to be unleashed. All they needed was a reason to start stepping, and sadly that reason would come. After the loss of Tuka, STL was determined to get revenge on Odee. And that day would come, August 10th, 2011. It's shortly after midnight and Odee Perry hops on his bike to head to the local store. As he exits the Parkway Garden gates, an SUV right there stops in its tracks. That's when 2 assailants hop out and run down on Odee. This was a huge moment in Chicago history, and the Parkway Gardens were absolutely shocked. Odee was one of those staples in the community that you could never imagine losing.
Cause he was like one of our first ones that we lost. Like, we weren't losing friends at the time or losing close ones at the time. So when we lost him, everybody felt it.
Due to his significance, everyone decided to ditch the Wick City name and adopt O Block in his commemoration.
I remember the day after Odee died, man, and I was like, damn, I wonder what the hell we finna call a block now, and then as soon as we came around, we all the way on the 65th end, and I saw that bitch right there spray painted on the garbage can, O Block. I tell Dr. I'm like, I just thought of that shit. I'm like, I knew they was finna call this bitch O Block, like I knew he was gonna.
The loss of Odee brought everyone in Parkway even closer together than before. They were all there for this, and for whatever reason, it brought them an inexplicable bond. Nothing could ever separate or divide O Block, as they were now all together in his commemoration. Odee was big on everyone sticking together, so if we ever get in fights with our brothers, we're never taking it too far. Remember this for later in the video. Well, after the loss of Odee, T-Roy and Vaughn would go absolutely nuts for revenge.
It was sad, man, and then T-Roy was right there with him his last little moments, and T-Roy, and then T-Roy said that, oh, was like, damn, they got me, bro, like that was his last words into that, so that shit changed T-Roy. That shit changed T-Roy, cause that shit happened, Troy and Vaughn, what the jumped off head first, and when they did, they jumped off at a higher level, more aggressive than the niggas who was around O was.